Have you ever wondered why some people seem almost wired to obey authority, whilst others instinctively question or resist it? After World War II, Theodor Adorno wanted to understand how ordinary people could support or even carry out horrific acts under Nazi rule. Adorno's explanation? A theory known as the Authoritarian Personality. Theodor Adorno first proposed the concept of the authoritarian personality in the 1950s. To help us understand and explore his ideas, we're going to use the world of Harry Potter. That's not just because it's iconic, it's because J.K. Rowling wrote the series drawing clear parallels between Voldemort's rise and Hitler and Nazi Germany. This explanation shifts the focus away from external factors and onto individual personality. The idea is that certain personality traits make some people more likely to obey authority figures. So what are the characteristics of an authoritarian personality? Well, they are typically highly respectful and submissive towards authority figures, harsh, hostile or prejudiced towards people they see as lower in status or outside their in-group. They show contempt for those seen as inferior. Dogmatic, they see the world in black and white terms, believing there's one right way and little room for ambiguity, a tendency to be rigid and conformist, valuing order, tradition and discipline above all else. So who would be a perfect fictional example? Dolores Umbridge. She insists on absolute order.
No, enough! I will have order!
Values tradition above reason and enforces cruel punishments, all in the name of authority.
Because you know, deep down, you deserve to be punished.
And of course, Lucius Malfoy.
You lost me, my servant!
Status obsessed, unquestioningly loyal to Voldemort, and full of contempt for those lower in status.
What's the use in being a disgrace to the name of wizard if they don't even pay you well for it?
We have a very different idea about what disgraces the name of wizard, Malfoy.
Clearly.
Another helpful example is his son, Draco Malfoy. He's unquestioningly loyal to authority and fiercely devoted to hierarchy, and just like his father, showing contempt and looking down on those he considers inferior.
No one asked your opinion, you filthy little mudblood.
But where does this personality come from? According to Adorno, authoritarian personalities grow up with parents who are very strict and controlling, demand absolute loyalty, set impossibly high standards, are very critical when the child fails, and importantly, parental love is often conditional. If you behave as expected, then you'll receive affection and be loved.
Touch anything, Draco.
Yes, Father.
Adorno, drawing from Freud's psychodynamic theory, argued that this harsh upbringing creates a deep inner conflict. The child feels anger and resentment towards their parents, but showing this openly isn't allowed because they respect those in authority, so the anger is repressed. Instead, the child adopts an uncritical respect for authority and displaces that repressed hostility onto weaker or lower status people.
And you must be Miss Granger. Yes, Draco's told me all about you and your parents. Muggles, aren't they?
This helps explain why authoritarian personalities often display both strong obedience to those in power and prejudice or aggression towards those they see as inferior.
You filthy little mudblood.
Draco's not just following orders. He believes in the idea of purebloods and hierarchy. That internalized belief system is exactly what Adorno was talking about. To investigate this, Adorno and colleagues surveyed over 2,000 white middle-class Americans using a questionnaire called the F scale, where F stands for fascism. Participants rated their agreement with statements like, obedience and respect for authority are the most important virtues children should learn. What the youth needs most is strict discipline and rugged determination. The true American way of life is disappearing so fast that force may be necessary to preserve it. So what were the results? They found that higher F-scale scores correlated with higher prejudice against minority groups. In other words, their data suggested that people with authoritarian personalities personalities were more likely to obey and more likely to show prejudice. Another piece of evidence comes from Elms and Milgram in 1966. After Milgram's famous obedience experiments, they followed up with 40 participants, 20 who had fully obeyed up to 450 volts and 20 who had refused. Each participant completed Adorno's F-scale along with other personality questionnaires. They found that the obedient participants scored higher on the F-scale. They also tended to admire the experimenter more and, check this out, were generally less close to their fathers.
I am your father.
All consistent with Adorno's theory. Together, this suggests that those with authoritarian personalities are indeed more likely to obey, even in extreme situations. But how well does this theory hold up? Let's critically evaluate it. A major limitation of research into the authoritarian personality is that much of it relies on correlational data. For example, Adorno's original study and Elms and Milgram's follow-up research only identified a relationship between authoritarian traits and obedience without proving causation. This means we cannot be certain that an authoritarian personality causes someone to obey authority. It's possible that other factors are influencing it. For example, some studies have found that people with lower levels of education tend to score higher on authoritarianism and are also more likely to obey, suggesting that a third variable could be responsible for the link. This weakens authoritarian personality as an explanation, as the evidence lacks the experimental control needed to establish a clear cause and effect relationship. Another significant criticism comes from Greenstein, who argued that the F-scale used to measure authoritarian personality suffers from serious methodological flaws. Greenstein famously described the F-scale as a comedy of methodological errors, pointing out issues such as response bias. Many of the items on the F-scale are worded in the same direction, making it a leading questionnaire. People who tend to agree with statements in general, known as acquiescence bias, are more likely to score as authoritarian, regardless of their actual beliefs. This undermines the F-scale's validity, as it may not be accurately measuring authoritarian personality traits, but rather a general tendency to agree. As a result, the F-scale's lack of scientific rigor casts doubt on Adorno's conclusions, weakening the credibility of the authoritarian personality as a reliable explanation for obedience. Another criticism is that it overlooks the powerful role of situational variables. For example, Milgram's own studies showed that obedience levels change dramatically depending on factors like the authority figure's uniform, the physical proximity of the experimenter, and the location of the study. This reduces the overall explanatory power of the authoritarian personality, as it fails to account for the full range of factors that influence obedient behavior. So, is there a certain type of person who's more likely to obey? Possibly. But here's an intriguing question. If people like Umbridge or Lucius show how personality fuels obedience, what about those who resist authoritarian control? People like Harry, Hermione, or Sirius Black, who question authority and think independently. In our next video, we'll explore how some people stand strong, even in the face of powerful pressure to conform or obey. To watch that, click the video on the screen now, and for more psychology resources, don't forget to check out the Bear It in Mind website. I hope you found this video helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.